Babysitters of Reddit, what's your demon child story? I used to babysit the two boys of family while their parents went out once every few weeks to get some alone time. I had looked after them before and they were usually well behaved and listened very well. This family had a few cats and they would climb in all sorts of odd places such as in the sinks, bookshelves, cupboards, etc. Well, this night I guess they had left the dryer door open, and when one of the kids went downstairs to get his ball hockey gear, I guess he closed the door on the cat and started the dryer. I was already outside waiting at this point, so I heard nothing about this until we came back inside and I noticed the dryer was on. I asked the kids why it was on and they said their mom was doing laundry. I knew for a fact that it was off when after the parents left, so when I went to investigate I opened it to a completely burned and mangled cat that was essentially twisted like a pretzel. I told the parents what happened and that their kid was a psychopath and needs help now because he clearly is not right in the head. Never babysat anyone's kids ever again. The parents were in shock. They didn't blame me or get mad. Just shocked that one of their kids murdered their cat like that. It still makes me uncomfortable to think about him. Oh my god. I babysat all through junior high and high school to make my spending money. The worst was a referral for the friends of a family I babysat for all the time. There were two twin boys who were 8, and a little girl who was just starting her toilet training. The kids were very nice during the introductions, but it soon turned out they were hyper as heck as soon as their parents left. The boys whooped and hollered and chased each other through the house. I convinced them to play Legos or whatever in their room to quiet them down because I had to deal with the little girl who needed a potty. She kept trying to poop in her little training potty but it wasn't happening. Then I heard the boys screaming at the top of their lungs, so I left the girl on her potty to find out why the boys were freaking out. The boys' bedroom had 2 single beds. Each boy was standing on his bed pee at the other one like they were having a pee-pee duel. They got urine everywhere, on the walls, the carpet, the sheets and all over each other. I'm ticked at these kids and tell them to change their clothes and strip the sheets. They just keep laughing at me and make me chase them around the house like it is a funny game to be soaked in pee. Meanwhile, the little girl, who is not wearing any pants or undies, drags her potty into the kitchen singing at the top of her lungs about how she pooped and wants me to look. When one of the boys runs through the kitchen, he accidentally overturns the potty and stuff gets all over the linoleum. As much as I wanted to cry from utter frustration, I managed to hold my temper and calm them all down enough while I cleaned up as best I could. Tough when it isn't your house and I had no idea where they kept all their cleaning supplies. When the parents finally came home, they didn't offer any apologies for how their kids behaved or any extra tip or anything like that. Needless to say, that was the first and last time I ever babysat for that family. ETA. This was way back before everyone had cell phones, so calling the parents to come home immediately wasn't really a good option. It would have involved calling a movie theater, or whatever, to track them down when I didn't even know what film they were seeing or even know if they had finished eating dinner out yet. Unless the kids were dying, I would not call the parents. I am rather proud of my 14-year-old self for being a trooper and sticking it out rather than giving up. Plus it is just pee and poop. I changed diapers and cleaned up after pets before. I had one main family I regularly babysat for after college and they recommended me to a friend of theirs who had 2 girls. Both families were well off, but very different. Anyway, the second family's 2 girls were beyond spoiled. I mean, TV reality show spoiled. The youngest, who was 5, would blood curdle scream for a good 15 minutes running through this mansion house when it was time for bed. I always felt like an butthole calling the mother, but they didn't pay me enough to put up with that balls. I'd have to set the girl up in the special room and rub her back while she fell asleep after she spoke to her mother. I sat for them 3 times and avoided their calls after that. I'm surprised you lasted 3 jobs. I babysat for a few families on my street as a preteen teen. Word of mouth spread and a family maybe 6 streets away asked me to watch 3 kids. 3 kids seemed like a lot for not knowing them, but they said they'd only be gone a few hours. Parents leave, kids turn into demon spawn. 2 little boys and 1 youngest child girl. They tormented her until she was literally hiding, clinging to my legs and clothes. I turned on a movie and they were okay for a minute. Then one boy gets up and pulls his pants down and literally just starts pee in the middle of the living room. He's totally potty trained, like 6. I freak out and start to clean it up and send the boy to his room. The other brother followed him, as they shared a room, and just sat there with him. The girl sneaks downstairs throughout all this and unbeknownst to me starts making an F5 grade mess. After I clean the pee, I go to get them out of the boy's room. Surprise, door is closed. Oh, and apparently locked. The one boy is only like 3 and is crying because he can't open it and his brother won't let him out. The older boy is defiant and just screaming at me, "No, I am not opening it. You're not my mom. I want my mommy." We had a standoff for a few minutes before I realized the girl was gone. Well, I wasn't getting the boys out, so I went to get the phone and call the parents while I tried to find the girl. She pulled out all the freaking toys and they were everywhere and I couldn't find her because she was like in a pillow pile somewhere. I don't really have an ending to the story, but needless to say I was pretty much in tears by the time they came home. One of them drove me home and kept apologizing and hoped I'd still give them another chance. That did not happen. Maybe that's why I'm scared to have little boys. Also, this was probably 15 plus years ago. I was maybe 14. I didn't have the mental capacity to know what to do or how to handle any of this. And yeah, I was paid probably $5-7 an hour. It was awful and scarred me from babysitting for a while. It makes me mad when I feel like parents know crap like that will happen. You don't need a teenage girl to babysit kids like that, you need an experienced nanny. I had a kid go to the bathroom, poop, run out with no pants, no wiping, grab my house key, and throw it in the poop. While I fished it out, he sat on the couch rubbing his butt. I used every kind of soap on that key. When his parents got back, I waited to get paid. Then I explained things pointing to the spot on the couch and left. Good for you for not cleaning it. The parents popped the kid out. They should be forced to deal with what the kid pops out too. I had a kid who climbed out his bedroom onto the roof of the house and started the house on fire. The kid was a demon. He was 9 at the time. Holy frick, were you there when it happened? Had a 5-year-old pull out a pocket knife on me and demand I give him my Pokemon cards. Also had a kid try to pry the kitchen window off because he wanted to see the kids I was watching that were inside. Stuck me with a needle to see what I would do. Made painted rocks together. When we set them out to dry they dropped mine in a bucket of water. Had a massive meltdown. Over 15 minutes on a street corner. When I walked the opposite direction they wanted to go around the block to get to the park. Ended up carrying 2 of them. One on my hip and the other over my shoulder while the eldest followed. I am not a large person. Spoke rudely to me about me in my second language that I had only just begun learning and refused to respond to English which they were fluent in. Spat in my food while they thought I wasn't looking. Got just so many things. Those kids were freaking terrors. Friend babysat a kid with pica. Had to follow him around everywhere yelling no, don't eat that. Kind of like having a new puppy. Ended the night watching him chew on her flip-flop while it was on her foot. I just imagine her exhausted while the kid is chewing on her flip-flop like I don't even care anymore. Not technically a babysitter, but for a few months I had to babysit my husband's nieces and nephews. These kids are awful. Their parents neglect them and it shows. Here are a few highlights. I rescued a 2-week-old kitten, nursed him back to health and adopted him. One day while I was doing dishes, the 2 youngest kids took him outside and tried to drown him in the above ground pool. Twice. He survived. My in-laws' house was filthy and roach infested. While one of the kids was eating dinner, a roach apparently crawled across his plate. He started hysterically crying. I go to calm him down and one of the others runs into the kitchen, opens every spice she can get hand on and dumps them all over the kitchen. I decide I have to keep the 2 smaller ones with me at all times due to their antics. I put them on the kitchen counter to help me cook. They actually start behaving and I thought I had found a successful method in handling them. I was wrong. One asks me a question while the other takes out glasses from the cupboard and starts smashing them on the ground. I go to stop her when the other little one starts smashing plates. The 2 oldest were sisters and they hated each other. They get into a fight over the TV. Could have been over the Xbox. I can't quite remember. The older sister starts chasing after the younger sister. She eventually smashes the younger sister's fingers in the bathroom door. While the younger sister is crying, the older sister is laughing maniacally. That's just a few. There are several other stories that make me so grateful to have moved far away from them all. Babysat two brothers. The younger proceeded to get into an argument with the older. It quickly escalated into the younger grabbing a kitchen knife and threatening the older brother with it. I babysat two kids throughout the school year and multiple days in the summer when I was in high school. I was pretty much a 9/5 nanny when not in school. I really love those kids, which is surprising, considering the first time I babysat them all day it all went to heck. The older sibling was a boy in my cousin's grade, the younger a little girl. They were maybe 6/7 and 3/4 at this point. I had babysat once or twice before, but never a whole day. I don't know what started it, but the kids began to fight. Before I could break it up, the little girl threw a heavy, pointy, metal toy plane at her brother. It hit him right in the corner of his eye, barely missing his actual eyeball. He starts gushing blood everywhere, all over his clothes, all over the expensive Disney store Winnie the Pooh blanket his sister had been walking around with, all over the pristine white carpet. He freaks out and starts crying, asking me if he is dying. Hardcore, terrified kid sobs. I rush into action and usher him into the bathroom and get a cold washcloth. I had to coax his hands away from his face so I could see what I was dealing with, and eventually I get the blood wiped away and see it's a very small cut. I have him hold the cold washcloth to his eye and I work on calming him down. The bleeding stops. I get him into fresh PJs and send him to his bed to lie down for a few minutes since he wore himself out. That's when I realize that I haven't seen his sister in about 10-15 minutes. I got sidetracked with the bleeding, panicking kid and now I have no idea where the culprit is. I run around the house and check all the doors and locks. Still locked. So, I know she is at least inside. I'm fighting back tears and running around the house shouting her name trying to find her. I go back to her brother's room deciding that I need to get his help. And that's when I hear it. Little sniffles and quiet hiccups from behind his bedroom door. She was a small child and had hidden behind the door fearing that she was in trouble and that I was going to spank her. I didn't. So, now I'm comforting her, but also telling her that hurting her brother and hiding from me isn't okay. I'm completely drained and wigged out at this point, so I have the kids go to the living room with me and sit them at opposite ends of the couch. I put on a kids film and get to work cleaning up the blood from the carpet and floor. Then, I sit at the kitchen table. Open concept. I can see them and quietly try to calm myself down so I don't puke all over myself. I'm really proud I got the blood stains out of the carpet though. That actually doesn't sound too bad. At least she knew what she did was wrong. Not like some of the kids in this thread who kill their family pets in clothes dryers or cover every surface of a room in fesses. I once watched two brothers while their parents went to the movies. The boys were around 5 and 6 and normally acted pretty nice, but shortly after their parents left things got really weird. They asked me to come up to their playroom then closed the door. They both started to play with some toys, but periodically they would turn around and start touching me inappropriately. I kept telling them to stop and that it was inappropriate, but they just laughed and would continue. I finally ran downstairs and ignored them while they jumped on furniture and threw crap at me. Their parents finally came home and gave me $100 for a 3-hour ordeal. They must know that their kids are evil little shoots. I found out later that they killed their pet hamsters by throwing them into their ceiling fan at high speed. Frick those kids. Particularly the inappropriate touching really concerns me. It might suggest they themselves had been inappropriately touched by someone else, which might also explain some of the other behavior. Once I babysat a kid who decided that all he wanted to do was lock me in the shed. When I said, no, we would not be doing that, he burst into tears. He kept sobbing and begging and hitting me for about a half hour. That really sounds like the kid might have been being abused. Sometimes kids just have wild imaginations, but this is really specific, especially with his reaction. I didn't really babysit much but the time I babysat my cousins. One was a wee little one so she slept in her crib. The 9-year-old however wanted to eat ice cream his mother had put in the freezer, but I didn't know the little bastard was lactose intolerant until he crap all in his pants and all over their couch. That day, I learned why babysitters ask for the kids' diets and allergies. Not a babysitter story, but I imagine there are some terrifying stories about this kid, and the aftermath plays itself out well. My parents had some dear friends from church that had a couple of kids, both quite a bit younger than me. Family get-togethers were brutal, especially when we had to venture to their house. The kids were whiny and bratty beyond all belief. It was basically one constant breakdown, until one of the parents tried to usher the kids off to bed in their onesies. Anyway, at one of these ill-fated dinner parties, I was off trying to kill some time. God only knows what we did before smartphones. The elder child was playing with some thick, wooden blocks. He didn't really have the gift of the gab, but he started sounding rather agitated. I turned to look at him, and was greeted with a very close look at one of his wooden blocks as it cracked me right in the eye socket. As a 10 or 11-year-old, I wasn't about to betray my veneer of toughness, so I took it like a man. The kid, however, started screaming his lungs out like I'd hit him with a block. His mom came rushing in, fully prepared to admonish me for some perceived misdeed, until she saw the enormous goose egg growing above my eye. She asked me what happened and I tried to spell it out as nicely as possible. Her solution? The goodnight ritual of stories, songs and soft cooing, but not before throwing out those evil wooden blocks that almost certainly drove her darling son to such madness. Fast forward 8 years, making him about 15-16. The block thrower is in and out of juvie, insanely addicted to H and constantly stealing from his family to feed his addiction. Parents, show a little tough love to your kids. Not so much a nightmare, but it was an odd night. I was in my senior year of college and picked up an occasional babysitting gig from care.com. The family is well-to-do, awesome people in a hella good part of town, and the kids are 8 and 12, so I'm really only there to make sure nobody burns the nice house to the ground. With that being said, the younger one, who we'll call Adam, was definitely on the spectrum. I head over one night and the parents call Adam down. I notice he's just in his whitey tighties, which is how he slept, and he seems totally freaking out of it. The parents ask him to tell me what had happened. When he's too incoherent to tell me, they finally blurt out that he had his tonsils taken out like 48 hours ago. Oh, okay, awesome. Thanks for the heads up, but I guess this is what I'm dealing with. So anyways, Adam goes back to bed and I don't hear anything out of him for the next like 5 hours because little guy is high as frick on pain meds. I checked up on him a few times, we're good, whatever. It's now around 10-11 at night and I hear him come down the stairs and he's holding a stuffed animal Bowser. Hey buddy, how are you feeling? Adam says nothing. What you doing, Adam? He silently walks to the kitchen. Adam, do you want something to eat? He opens the freezer in total silence still. Why don't you let me help you, Adam? To remind you, this kid is in nothing but his undies and holding a stuffed animal. He finally acknowledges my presence and looks me straight in the eye, then gargles. Bowser hungry. Still cracks me up thinking about it. TLDR. Kid is high AF. Gets the munchies but can't communicate very well due to pain drugs, recently removed tonsils. The build up to that was so intense. After reading the other stories I was expecting something horrific involving poop to happen, but that was just cute . I had a kid who was literally the embodiment of Cartman from South Park. He fried his pet rat and tried to eat it. I wasn't there when it happened, but when his parents told me, I made sure to never see that devil again. But my May. I was babysitting 3 little nightmares. One of them would tear apart her dolls, then Frankenstein them Sid style, but add a touch of red paint along the glue lines, but that's a different story. Before the mom left me with her 3 demon spawn children, she told me the kids were allowed all the ice cream and candy and sugar they wanted, but that they should go to bed around 9:30ish. Hearing this, as soon as the mom left they went to town on the pantry. For the next 4 hours they would not calm down. They were breaking crap. They locked their kitten in one of the cabinets and I spent half an hour getting the poor thing out. They had a dead cat in the freezer and pulled it out to show it to me. Around 10 o'clock the youngest has passed out and I carried him to his bed and tucked him in. 1 down, 2 to go. Half an hour later the middle child has settled down in her room with her iPad just playing Minecraft. 2 down 1 to go. The older sister is in the living room making one of her Barbie hellspawn. This one had 8 extra long limbs and no face. I really didn't want to confront this child because she was kinda scary. When I do convince her to go to bed, she goes into the room she shares with her sister and yells to her sister, who was about 7, about how there was a monster in the house and that it was going to kill us all. Her sister flipping out and jumping through the open window and running to the road at around 10:45 at night. I freak out and jump out the window and run after her. I catch up to her just as a car is passing and all they see is me grabbing a little girl and dragging her into the forest. So yeah, that was the last time I ever babysat for them. I should probably add they had a dead cat in their freezer because someone shot it with an arrow and the police needed it for the investigation. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.